Good morning, everyone. I think we've got several of our attendees joining us already, and everybody else will drift in as they do. I'm Collins Rex. I'm the State Manager for Victoria for the Export Council of Australia, and I'm also the Manager for the Indonesia Now project. And we're delighted to have you all with us today, and we certainly hope that by the end of today's session not only will you know more about the program, but you'll also know a little bit more about Indonesia, which should whet your appetite for the program, and we look forward to seeing as many of you as possible go through the program as it advances beyond today's webinar to our series of seminars, and eventually, of course, through the business mission and the mentoring that follows on from that. We're very pleased today to be joined by two fellow presenters. We have Lisa McCauley, who's our Chief Operating Officer, joining us to tell us more about the program, and we have Najib Lawand, who is joining us from FIAL to talk a little bit about doing business in Indonesia with specific reference to food and the FMCG sector. And without further ado, we'll pass over to Najib to talk a little bit further about what you can expect if you want to be doing business in Indonesia. Just before we pass over to Najib, though, just one thing to bear in mind: we do have quite a large group joining us today. So if you have any questions, which we'll take at the end, we'll ask that you type your questions in chat, and then Lisa and I will respond accordingly. Najib will be leaving us at the end of his presentation. He's joining us from Singapore, and since it's an ungodly hour and he has meetings to attend, we're delighted that he's with us. So I'll pass over to you, Najib.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I've been asked to provide some, I guess, buyer insights. Recently, back in February and March, I undertook an extensive market visit to Asia that included 8 markets, of which Indonesia is one. And while I was in Indonesia, I met with senior buyers and general managers of leading high-end supermarket retailers and distributors to high-end retailers and food service, in fact. I did this through Food Innovation Australia. Food Innovation Australia is a Commonwealth-funded industry-led organisation that's a catalyst for collaboration. We work with organisations like the Export Council of Australia, state government agencies, Austrade, DFAT, Australian Food and Grocery Council, and so forth, to deliver maximum value to industry, because while many individual agencies are doing great work for the industry, often it's in isolation, and so what our role is to try to bring it all together and make it even more meaningful for industry. So on Indonesia, first of all, some general buyer insights, and this is relevant for Indonesia as it is for just about every Asian market. And that is that interest in Australian product at the moment is exceptionally high. From a food perspective, it's a lot of it is around quality, safety, and traceability. And I won't get into too much detail about that because I think there's newspaper articles and conferences every day about it. So we'll park that to the side. But the other interesting factor is that retailers are wanting to diversify product away from Europe and US. When you look at most of the retail chains in Asia, the vast majority of high-end imported product comes from Europe and USA. And most recently, there have been, for various reasons, issues with product coming in from those countries. And so retailers, the biggest sort of concern for them is not having product on the supermarket shelves, given that the cost of rent in many of these markets is very high. So in order to mitigate that risk, they're increasingly looking to Australia as the third sort of key area of supply for FMCG products. The other advantage that Australia has is its proximity to market. And in particular, if you're selling a product that is reasonably perishable, that gives a massive advantage in terms of freight rates in, but in terms of also the proximity to the market, and therefore product having longer shelf life on shelf to be sold. The other thing that's exciting the retailers there is a noticeable shift from Australian suppliers from being trading focused to marketing focused. In the past, Australian exporters have been seen as the type to just work hard to secure the first order and then sit on their hands and wait for the second order and not really be involved in the product offtake process. And from the research that we've certainly had, given the current situation with the retail dynamics in Australia, many of these SMEs are now thinking, well, you know what, we either don't, won't, or dislike supplying to the major retailers in Australia, and so export markets is going to be the way to go. And as a result, when they have their buyer meetings with overseas buyers, marketing is now part of the conversation, whereas it never used to be before. So for a combination of all these reasons, interest in Australian product is now high. Buyers are seeking suppliers that are reliable in their supply. Again, this whole issue of not having product on the shelf being a big problem for retailers. So when they place an order and they give the lead time that the supplier says they need, they expect the product to be in on time. They want suppliers that take a long-term view to the markets, again around this marketing concept, which includes promotional activity. But they also want direct relationships with the brand owner, and this is particularly important for Indonesia because, in particular, the supermarket chains, unlike Singapore and Malaysia and Thailand and all the others, they're actually not allowed to import directly themselves. So they have to do it through an importer or a distributor. Now, many of these retailers will have their preferred importers and work through certain companies. But at the end of the day, they're working through them to buy the product from the source market. What they want is to have a relationship with the brand owner so that they know for certain that the full product range is being offered to them, and that the brand owner may be looking to innovate their product specifically for the Indonesian market, maybe looking to make a smaller pack size or whatever it might be. But that often doesn't get communicated through the importer in the middle. So relationships with the brand owner is very important for the buyers. So in Indonesia, from a supermarket chain perspective, there are a handful of key high-end supermarket chains. I mean, there are many sort of middle and low-end, but Australian product will really struggle to sell in those retail chains purely on price competitiveness. But from a premium end, we're really looking at hero supermarkets, Ranch Market, Kimchiks, Food Hall, Grand Lucky. Lotte from Korea is also active in Indonesia, and they've got a few high-end concept stores that are coming up across Indonesia as well. So there are a few retailers out there, although I think a lot of people think that Indonesia has such a large population that there must be thousands and thousands of these like high-end retailers out there supporting the burgeoning middle class that are becoming really wealthy with a lot of propensity to spend. Well, in actual fact, we're looking at high-end supermarket chains that are from 10 stores, up to 40 stores each. So it's not enormous, but they're growing. The pricing structure for product when it lands essentially is you have tariffs that go from 0 to 5%. Fortunately, tariffs are treated favorably given the free trade agreements we have with the ASEAN region. Distributors' margins vary anywhere between 20% to 30%, and the retailer's margin varies anywhere between 20 and 30%. And there is a VAT in Indonesia of 10%. So typically, when a product lands, you might be looking at a multiplier of 2 to 2.5. So if it lands for $1, it'll probably retail for somewhere between $2 and $2.50. And so, what does this all mean? I guess I've just given you a sort of an overview or a background, but there is a massive challenge in getting product into Indonesia, and that's its registration process. But in actual fact, that's the massive opportunity. The registration process is lengthy. It takes a long time. You're required to supply so much information to the extent that you would be reasonable to believe that they're taking all your secrets to manufacture the product there themselves. Now, that's not in actual fact the case, but when they're asking for how's the product manufactured and detailed typical analysis and the like, it can really be quite off-putting. And as a result, many suppliers are in fact discouraged from going into the market because of this massive need to get an ML number. And the ML number is the number that appears on the product when it's on the supermarket shelf. And when the authorities go and do random investigations on the supermarket shelves, if the product doesn't have an ML number, it gets confiscated. So it's quite a serious process. But as a result, one thing that you will notice when you go to Indonesia, in particular from a food and beverage perspective, is that there aren't as many brands on the shelves as you will find in Singapore or Hong Kong or Malaysia or Thailand or anywhere else. And as a result, this challenge of getting the product in fact, is a massive opportunity, because if you're prepared to work through it and take the 6 months or so that it will take to have your product registered, you have space on the shelf. They are demanding the diversity in supply, but it's not easy for them to source that supply. And so if you're prepared to show the patience, there will be space for you on the shelf. And as those categories grow, and as the supermarket chains add more and more outlets, and as the middle class continues to grow, and as they get more propensity to spend, then you will grow with it. So I think Export Council of Australia have picked a real winner in Indonesia to run their sort of first project in this space. And I think it's very exciting for suppliers to be involved in it. And if anybody's got any questions, I'm more than happy to field them. These are my details there, but also feel free to get my information from Lisa as well. We have a close relationship with Lisa and Peter Mace, and we're always there to partner and work with them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Najib. That was certainly a very edifying presentation, and I think it's one of those that will have people thinking long and hard about how they approach things. I know you have to rush off, so we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for your time, and everybody, you've seen Najib's contact details. You're more than welcome to either field questions through us to him, or to respond directly to him if you have a question. And obviously, if there are questions that arise at the end of today's session, we'll pass those on to Najib as well if we cannot answer them ourselves. Thank you very much, Najib. And we're now going to pass over to Lisa McCauley. Lisa is our COO, and she's going to talk you through the Indonesia Now program. By the end of this session, you should have a pretty good idea of how the program works, what it is that's required of you if you want to be a participant in the program, and more specifically in the business mission to Indonesia at the beginning of next year. And you'll have an opportunity at the end to ask some questions as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Collins, and thank you everyone for joining us, I guess, bright and early on a Monday morning. And thank you, Najib, for your presentation from over in Singapore. Najib really sort of set the scene in terms of the opportunities that are available in Indonesia, and I'm probably not going to go too much into detail with you there on the market opportunities, but we identified Indonesia for this program because we could see what the opportunities were for companies in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. And as you can see up on the screen, these are just some key statistics of the growth in certain product sectors over in the market. And this is where we really want to be able to assist Australian companies in terms of accessing these opportunities. The reason I guess we chose Indonesia initially was that in the recent survey that the Export Council ran, the Australian International Business Survey, Indonesia was actually ranked as one of the 4th most difficult overseas markets in which Australian companies do business. The key barriers that companies were experiencing were understanding local culture, customer payment issues, really the understanding of market regulations, understanding of licenses and standards, as well as looking at customs costs and delays. And these were really the top barriers that Australian companies had identified. Furthermore, 74% of our respondents said that Indonesia was more or much more difficult than doing business in Australia. However, Indonesia was also the 5th most important overseas market that Australian exporters were targeting, and as Najib has highlighted and as my previous slide highlighted, there are a lot of opportunities for Australian companies to grow into this market. And the program that we've developed, Indonesia Now, is not only to present those opportunities to you, but it's also to help you throughout the course of our program to really deal with a lot of those barriers up front before you start entering the market. So the program has been developed really to deal with the barriers that companies identified to us in that survey, and to ensure that as you plan to expand into the market, you can actually deal with a lot of those barriers in the planning process up front before we take companies over into Indonesia with our business mission, which will be held next year. This program is actually really a combined program with the support of Austrade's Asian Business Engagement Plan, and it really has been designed to demystify doing business in Indonesia. And the whole program really starts with, before you hop on a plane and you go over to the market, to really go through quite a comprehensive training program, consultative program, and also an export review. So the whole program has been developed to feature a series of training webinars, face-to-face workshops, consulting opportunities, market research, before that culminates with a business mission over to Indonesia, where the first part of our mission is about helping to demystify some of those in-market barriers, and then the second part is an opportunity for one-to-one business matching and for companies to showcase their products at a special event that's being organised. We want you to be a part of it, and that really is what today's initial webinar is about. And what I'm going to talk through now are really all of the different steps involved in the Indonesia program and how you as a company can get involved, in which we really do hope that you can. So the first step, and you've probably already been aware of what's coming up, is we are running a series of face-to-face training seminars across Australia.